Right, so anyone here using Intune for deploying software to Windows 10 devices? A shy start, a shockingly shy start, but so there's a man at the back of the room that is very interested in why that number is low. I'm sure he's very interested in seeing what the problems are. So I hope there's something for everybody in this presentation. We've spent a long time as a company, and me as an individual, testing, retesting different scenarios, and I've kind of got a lot of war wounds in the area. So my first question today, what date is it? Anyone know the date? The what? Of? No. For right now, it's the 30th of August, and we're in the twilight zone, okay? So the reason I hope will become clear as I tell my story, but right now is the 30th of August. I'm sure you're all looking forward to Ignite next month. Right? So disclaimer, first of all, what we're talking about today is just subject to rapid change, especially since this is August. Intune changes very, very quickly, new features coming almost weekly. So a bit about me. I know pretty much everyone here at this stage. Gerry Hampson, that's where you get me on Twitter, @GerryHampson. My blog is there. Co-authored a couple of books, one with Peter there, and another one, which was the more recent one, which I've actually got one to give out. Peter, you'll come up with something by the end of the session to... Yeah? So, ask some kind of mad question. Okay. So this is the agenda. First, we just introduce the deployment types we can do, and we talk about them. We talk about line of business app, which is a phrase that annoys me. We talk about Office 365 Pro Plus, some advanced software techniques, and then the recent development. Remember, this is August, and we're going to do some troubleshooting. Just very, very briefly see the kind of troubleshooting things you can do. So the first thing, let's introduce the components involved. So first, we have the Microsoft Cloud. The Microsoft Cloud contains many services. We have Azure AD, we have Intune, Office 365, Microsoft Store for Business, which all work together in an integrated fashion to manage your devices. And then we have Windows 10 computers. My advice is that you should always use the latest version, unless, of course, that's 1809. But you should use at least version 1709 in this case, because that's the minimum requirement for the management of Office 365 Pro Plus. And then you'll have tools for advanced software deployment. We'll soon see why these are actually required. Okay, so there are two ways of managing Windows computers with Intune. Full client or MDM. The Intune PC management part, the full client, will soon be deprecated. It's not available in Azure, and there is zero investment. No matter what you hear anywhere, there is zero investment in managing Windows computers with the full client. It's only available now in the Silverlight Classic console. So therefore, don't use it with Windows 10. Only use it if you have to with Windows 7 and Windows 8. MDM part was added in Windows 8.1. It's the only recommended approach right now. Okay? So these are the type of deployments you can create in Intune. Remember, this is August, remember that? Okay? So first one, we've got Office 365 Pro Plus, apps from the Microsoft or the public store, universal apps, APX, web link, MSIs with single files. MSIs are easy, aren't they? They've always been easy, right? But in the real world, is that actually useful? Why is that? We're going to have a, sorry? Yeah, and exes. MSIs with a bunch of other files, MSTs on top of that. So it's not useful. So we'll have a little poll shortly. First of all, let's talk about LOB apps. So 3 types are supported. as of today. So we have MSI, we have AppX, and we have AppX bundles. The phrase is very confusing to me. I don't actually like it. So for me, a line of business app is one that's developed in-house. I'm a traditional kind of guy. That's what it's always meant to me. So I'm not sure why it's called a line of business in the portal, because that's how we're going to deploy all our MSIs, not just in-house development ones. So it's very, very easy to upload and deploy simple MSIs. And MSIs are state-based, which means that the presence of an MSI is evaluated every 7 days. So it can be quite some time if you want to install it before it is automatically reinstalled. You know, in config manager world, we're perhaps used to that happening a bit quicker. Well, it's 7 days in Intune terms. It can be significant when we talk about PowerShell scripts, and we'll discuss that when we get there. So we add an app, we choose LOB, as we said, and then we browse to the file. Then we can add a little bit more detail for the app. For example, it's really cool that we can add command line arguments that allow us to specify the configuration information when the application is launched. But as only single MSIs are supported, we can't use MST files as arguments because there's no way of actually uploading the MST file in conjunction with the MSI for now. All right? Microsoft have made it very easy to deploy Office 365, and as I say, you need to have 1709 or later for this to happen. First, you select all the apps you need. They're all selected by default except Groove, which is no harm. You can optionally then select Project or Visio. Then you enter some details about the package with settings such as architecture, update channel, languages. Does anybody see anything strange about the languages? No, you don't. Yes, you do. See the English? English US only. In this part of the world, we don't actually consider that as English at all. So Microsoft are aware of our feelings in that area, so hopefully it's in hand. Okay. So also you can see there the update channels. That's really cool. We can choose what our update channel is. And there's something that's relatively new, which is that we can choose exactly which version is to be installed on our clients. We may or may not want the very latest version to be deployed, so we can now select which one it is. And that list of updates changes, list of versions changes as we move forward. A few caveats, as I said, devices must be 1709 or later. And you can add Office apps if some have already been installed. But you need to be careful because if an Office app is open when Intune installs the new suite on those devices, you can fail if users are using those apps. So it's not quite a great story. So you kind of should avoid, just do it once. Multiple app assignments aren't additive. So if you have a later app, it will actually overwrite the installment from before. So if you deploy Office with Word and then deploy it without Word, then Word will be uninstalled. Okay? It's also supported to remove any previous installations of Office, whether it's MSI or Click to Run. And one very cool part that upset me for a while is that it's now supported to edit a deployment afterwards, whereas previously we had to recreate the whole deployment. We couldn't edit, we couldn't do small changes. That came quite recently. Okay, so Microsoft Store for Business. It's the App Store for Windows 10 Universal Apps, and it can also be used for other features, for example, Windows Autopilot, but that's another story. Actually, I want to tell you the story, my Autopilot story. You guys know Greg Ramsey? Greg Ramsey's a US MVP, and he thinks he's very funny. We recently, Jason and I and Rob was there, we recently presented some sessions at MMS. And you have to apply and say, I want to do this, I want to do that. So I said, I want to do autopilot. And Greg sent me a mail and he said, yes, great. We'd like you to present the session on autopilot, but all the sessions will be co-presented, and we'd like you to co-present with Michael Niehaus, right? And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool, all right? But I also wanted to be a smartass. So I replied back to Greg, and I said, yeah, Greg, I'd love to do that. However, I'm a little disappointed you didn't partner me up with somebody with a working knowledge of the subject matter, all right? Quick as a flash, I got an email from Greg, and he said, that's funny, Michael said the same thing. Lovely, huh? So anyway, so Microsoft Store for Business, real easy to set up. You basically log on to the store with your global admin account, and you accept the terms. If you're really slow, it'll take you 2 minutes, okay? You guys, so how many are actually using Store for Business? I'm not hoping for a great response because of my last question. Yeah, very, very few. Again, I'm sure Paul is curious to know why people aren't. What?
Because it's not a clear message on what you should use the Store for Business or its company portal, or there's so many places to get the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's no proper approval process.
Agreed, agreed. So for the sake of the video, you're saying that it's very confusing where to go. Store for Business, company portal, no great approval. Yeah, yeah, these are things we've heard, yeah. Okay, so 2 types of application that you get from the Store for Business, online and offline. So online is available for all software and requires an internet connection. And some of the vendors allow offline licensing where you can actually download the app and you can deploy it then using your favorite deployment tool. Right? Okay, so this is what we were talking about earlier. Why MSI, single MSI installations, while it's pretty cool, it's not enough. For example, how many of your estate are running XEs and MSIs with multiple files? How many? So in terms of a number, is it C, is it D, is it somewhere between C and D? It's not A, is it? It's towards the high end of that. I'm pretty sure it's 80-90% are XEs or multiple files. If I ask you how many of your apps are just single MSIs and you get a single MSI every time you buy an app, very few, I would say, very few. So this is the problem, is we haven't had a way of doing this. So what we had it isn't enough. So therefore we need something more. And these are the options that we have for advanced software installation. Now remember, it's still August, right? So I think you all know what I'm talking about. So yeah, we can repackage our XEs and MSIs into a single MSI. Flexera Admin Studio is probably the one that we're most aware of. Or we can use PowerShell. But PowerShell's a problem, isn't it? Where do we put the content? You know, we can script everything, but what do we do with the content? Or we could convert all our apps to AppX, which is a job in itself. All right? So PowerShell. So when we first started to manage Windows desktops through the MDM channel, it wasn't a great experience in terms of software distribution, based on what I said. It was only MSIs. So what a shame it was that Intune didn't allow us to deploy and execute PowerShell scripts. And it didn't in the beginning. So that would really have helped us. So Microsoft obviously agreed, and Sidecar was born. So everyone heard of Sidecar was the Microsoft internal code name for this technology. And guys, do you remember we were invited to vote for what the name would be way back in the day? Mine didn't win, it was something kind of stupid. But they eventually called it the Intune Management Extension. Now, the Intune Management Extension supplements the native Windows 10 MDM capabilities. It allows you to upload a script to Intune and then just assign the script to an Azure AD group. The script will then run on the devices, and you can monitor them in the Intune console, right? So this step it was a good step in the right direction to encouraging people to move towards managing devices this way. Some prerequisites for this: the devices must be joined to Azure AD, obviously, and they had to run Windows 10, 1607 or later, which is no harm now because that's pretty old anyway. So how does it work? And how do we actually get the extension on the devices? Well, it's just an MSI itself, and we've been able to deploy MSIs for quite some time. So when a script is assigned to a user and the extension is not actually installed in the device, it's automatically pushed down by Intune and installed on the device, and you'll be able to see it. It's a service. It's a program in programs features. It's a service, and you'll see a folder structure with log files, access to log files. Then the agent checks for policy every 60 minutes. Remember, the device itself through Intune only syncs every 8 hours. So this is a huge step forward that this is checking for software or for scripts every 60 minutes. And you can actually force it by just restarting that service. There are some options. You can choose whether to run the script with the user's credentials on the device or in the system context. The system context is the default, which is clearly what people mostly will use. And you can choose whether or not the script must be signed by a trusted publisher. Now, limitation. You can only assign the PowerShell script to users and not devices. And you may say, well, big deal, so what? Well, it could be relevant for hardware vendor-specific things. If you want to script BIOS updates, no point sending that out to the user, yeah? Because you have to build the logic into the script. Also, if you want to deploy a script to different Windows 10 versions, for example, that's a problem, right? So we're going to have a look at just some pretty basic PowerShell scripts to see what I'm talking about. Now see how you can be as creative as you like. Now, I borrowed with pride. I'm not a PowerShell guru. So let me show you some things we can do. So this is the most basic type of script. Oh, see, this is not what I wanted. Sorry, bear with me. Talk among yourselves for a while. Okay. Okay, this is the most basic type of script. And you can see that the actual URL that, Jason's problem. The URL that you want is actually embedded in the script. And this particular script, what it does is it downloads the file, it copies it to that temporary location, and then it executes the file with that silent parameter. So that's easy. That's great, isn't it? But there's an obvious disadvantage here in that the content source is maintained by somebody else. So obviously, the path is subject to change. You've no control over that. There's a very good advantage there, that of course, is that the storage of that content doesn't cost us any money. Somebody else is looking after it. All right, so that's a very easy one. But what if I don't trust the vendor to change the path of my apps? And what can I do? So we can use Chocolatey. And Chocolatey is a package manager for Windows. And the guys at Chocolatey, they're the ones that will worry about maintaining the links and maintaining that everything's correct and it doesn't change. And combining the power of Chocolatey and the Intune management extension is very powerful. So if we have a look at that one, and we can, oh, here we go again. Right? So what this script does is it checks for the presence of a Chocolatey agent. It's just an MSI itself. And it will install Chocolatey if it's not installed. And once Chocolatey is installed, then the script will check for those packages. That's the package names in that array. All right? And you can add as many different applications to that array as possible, and it will install them in order. So where do you get, how do you know these names? Well, if you go onto the chocolatey.org site, /packages, you'll see them, all the packages there that are maintained by Chocolatey, and they will actually give you the Chocolatey names. So that's a pretty cool script that can do that for you. And many of those sources are actually on GitHub. So that's great. So all that content was maintained by a third party. But what happens if you create your own line of business app and you need to get the storage for that? So you can do something cool with Azure, but you need to be careful, because if you choose the wrong storage, all singing, all dancing, high replication, hot tier stuff, it can start to cost you a lot of money. So let's have a quick look in Azure. So we can upload our package as a blob. So that's what I've done here. So I've created a storage account. And in that blob, I've actually uploaded just a simple file, Dropbox, right? So if I go into the properties of Dropbox, it will give me the URL of that file in Azure, right? Let's copy that out. Okay. Then you can generate a shared access signature. So if we think of the URL as the location, and then the shared access signature as the key to get into that location, you need both. So let's do that. So I'll get back out of here. Oh, too far. Into the storage, and we're looking at shared access signature. And then we can generate a shared access signature, and we can copy that. And then we just add it to the end. And then that's the URL that we need for our script. So I can copy that out, and I can actually just download that using that path, or using that URL now. That should allow me just, see? Yep, so it's the address and the keys to the kingdom all together. And if we look at the script then, all we need to do is add that entire path, the URL, oh man, the URL plus the shared access signature, and put it in our script and run it as normal. So we're maintaining our own storage. Okay, but we obviously need to be careful. This could end up costing you some money if you've spent a lot of money on super cool storage. But we shouldn't have to maintain our own content. It's my belief. Okay? So if we look at a actual virtual machine, see what that looks like on a machine. Ooh. No, we won't. Let's continue. Sorry, forgive me here. Have you thought of a question, Peter? Oh, he's gone. Okay. All right. Now, there are some PowerShell gotchas. As I said, you can only assign to users and not devices, which is a problem in certain circumstances. You need to be aware of the log files containing sensitive data, because the entire script is logged to the Intune management extension log file. So if you've defined a static password in your script, you'll be able to see it in the log on every device. Okay? Also, if you use the method I've just shown you there, your own Azure container with your shared access signature, that's in the script. You can, not easily, but if you kind of know what you're at, you can get your shared access signature. So I guess the moral of the story is you don't really upload anything that you don't want anybody to see. So you don't upload anything to Azure that's got sensitive data. All right? Another problem is that hello, James.
You convert that to one-liner and set it as an encrypted and PowerShell one-liner work that way.
Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
So you can encrypt a PowerShell one-liner.
Yes, you could.
And you could then obscure everything.
You could. Yeah, yeah. As I said earlier, you can get as creative as possible with this stuff. Sorry, the question was, can you just encrypt the PowerShell? And the answer is, of course, yes. So this was the first real game changer in the whole thing, was being able to do PowerShell scripts. We're going to come across the second one shortly. But yeah, you can. You can. Where are we? Yeah, so once you upload a script, this is a problem for me, is after you do that, the Intune portal does not allow you then to go in and see the script that you've uploaded. You can remove it and add another one, but you can never go in and either, just to verify, well, is that the right one? Oh, I did 3 of those. Which version is that? You can't actually do that, so I don't like that. Also, what do we do about return codes? There's no native way of doing return codes or exit codes. You can write your own, so I mean, as I say, you can script anything, but natively there's no way of doing that. You can't schedule scripts. You could maybe create some kind of a script to do a scheduled task on the device, but there's no native way of scheduling. And if you do multiple script assignments, you can't control the order. That part is still missing. Okay? Right, desktop app converter. I don't like it. I was told that using clip art in PowerPoint presentations is old-fashioned, but I don't know. I just don't like this. So it shouldn't, to me, it shouldn't be this awkward to deploy apps to Windows 10 devices. So you'll see what I mean. So the way the desktop converter works, this is an option to convert apps from XEs and MSIs to AppX. It's desktop bridge is that term. And the desktop app converter is Microsoft's utility. There are others. So AppX itself is kind of a cool technology. A bit like AppV, it allows you to run your apps in their own bubble. So when you remove the AppX, a lot of the crap isn't left behind the way with other apps. And you can convert almost all well-behaved apps. I have a list here of the ones you can't do, ones that use kernel more drivers, require admin rights, ones that require .NET Framework earlier than, ones that try and modify the registry, and ones that try and write to a software directory when it's in use. So they're the ones you can't do. All right, so that uses containers. So you need to have Hyper-V capable 1607 or later, using hardware virtualization and SLAT. You need to use the Windows 10 SDK. You don't need the full installation. You just need those options there. And you need to have a base image that matches the computer's OS. I'm going to whiz through here because we haven't too much time. Before you run converted apps, you need to deploy Visual C++ to your clients. You need version 11 and 12. And then you need to sign them. And this can be a minefield in itself. So they need to be manually signed, and the signing cert must be trusted by the clients. You can either use a self-signed cert or one from your certificate authority, but it needs to have digital signature as its key usage. And that's the command line to create the certificate, which is a job in itself. Then you have to deploy the app. There are 2 ways you can do it in Intune, as a Windows Enterprise cert or trusted, Intune's trusted certificate feature, which is a bit of a minefield itself again. And then we use DAC to create the AppX file, and these are the commands that you need to do it. So it's all very much command line driven, not necessary in my opinion, or shouldn't be necessary. All right. Some other options for creating AppX files. You can use Advanced Install Express Edition. It's a free GUI-based utility if you don't like the DAC approach. And there are other commercial ones like Visual Studio or Install Shield. And then we have MSIX. We don't know much about MSIX yet. Launched at Build this year. It's going to be the new format that should be replacing both the MSI and AppX. And it'll inherit the features of universal apps, but introduce more container options and allow application customizations. It's reported that AppX will be 100% compatible with MSIX, and they should be easily converted. And I'm sure most of you noticed that the latest technical preview for Config Manager 18.10 actually contains a tool to convert your apps to MSIX. Okay, so far so good. So what do we know so far? Literally, if you have an app that's in any way awkward, it can be a bit of a pain to deploy it to Windows 10 devices. That's pretty much the story. So wouldn't it be great if we could just upload an awkward app to Intune and we don't have to worry about exes or multiple files? Well, it would certainly make our lives a lot easier. So, and now that it's been announced at Ignite, we can actually talk about sidecar for apps we weren't allowed to talk about for quite some time. So what's that all about? So the Intune management extension that we talked about for PowerShell, which is really cool, it's now been extended to include support for Win32 apps. This is a massive step forward in this whole solution, and it's taken away a blocker for many of my customers who just would not even entertain this until they could do this particular thing. So the prerequisites, again, same, must be Windows 10 16.07 or later, devices Azure AD joined, and Intune enrolled. All right? You use a thing called the Win32 app packaging tool, and this pre-processes the apps and converts them to a new file format, which is a .intune win format. And it doesn't matter whether it's a single file or multiple files, but it converts it to a single .intune win file, and we'll see that in a moment. Then you can natively upload that file to Intune. It's already been rolled out, I believe, to all tenants. It's in preview at the moment. And then you just create the app, assign it, and monitor it in the way we do with any other app. So this one's a real game changer, and it's going to, I believe, remove a blocker, and I think there's a lot more to come. Okay, let's just very quickly do that. I'm going to have to do this again. This is a pain. Okay, so I have the tool here. This is the app packaging tool. Intune win app util.exe. It's going to ask us a couple of questions. It's going to ask us for our source folder, the setup file name, and then an output folder. Now you can specify these as parameters in the single command, but I'm lazy. All right, so that's the source folder. Then we have the setup file itself. It's only just a single exe, which we weren't able to do before. Well, we could use scripts, but all right, and then the output folder. Oh. Can you read that, yeah? Yeah? Oh, I didn't copy that. Okay. It runs in milliseconds. So you can see the kind of things that it's doing here. It's validating the parameters, compressing the source folder, encrypting the file, computing SHA-256 hash, and there's where it creates the intune.win file. And that's it there. And it's actually compressed. So the strange thing about it is this was a .exe, and the .exe itself is actually slightly bigger than the compressed version of itself, which is kind of cool. Then we can just upload to Intune, and we see that the intune.win is a new file format in preview. It's at the bottom of the list. There we go. That's the new one there. Okay, and then we just upload and assign as usual. Yes?
Have you tried using it with like a large software?
Yes and no. I've tested this to death. I've started small, and because I want to break it. I want to be able to call Paul and say, I've just broken this. I have yet to be able to break it, but probably because I haven't got as far as AutoCAD.
I can get you to break it.
Because you've broken it, have you?
Yeah, already.
Yeah.
You did put a hash in any of the files.
Yes.
It breaks it straight away.
Yeah.
We've got case.
But why would there be a hash in a file name?
Ask Kathy.
Well, that's...
My question.
Well, do you know what? If you can only break it with McAfee, I'd say that doesn't matter. Yeah. As a virus in itself. Yeah.
Actually, Rob York's probably going to contact you about it. He's our tech acceleration colleague.
But that's terrible, isn't it? That's to have a hash in a file. I don't know.
Yeah,
It doesn't make sense.
put it this way, it's a good reason for us to finally get rid of Kathy, but that's another.
Yeah, but for years we've hated McAfee. McAfee breaks every DISM-related activity on your box. I mean, every time you want to do something with an image, you have to go to the security team and say, can you please? That's something else. Don't get me started.
The only other observation actually I'd make of it as well is it plays really well with the PS app before you get if anybody's using it.
Yeah.
So you can get it to.
Written by an Irish guy, by the way.
So if anyone's using it like
PowerShell deployment toolkit.
about close open apps, etc., it plays really well with it. So test it.
How are we for time? 10 minutes, Peter? 10 minutes? Yeah? Yeah. Okay, so, all right then. Just a little bit about troubleshooting. There are logs, perhaps not as many as we know from Config Manager land, but there are logs. So we've already talked about the PowerShell logs. So there are sidecar logs, Intune management extension.log file, which is very, very detailed log on the device. And now it also contains the information about the Win10 apps. MSI app deployment info is stored in the registry, plus there are MSI log files. So this is the registry showing the installation of an MSI. The status is at the bottom. You can see that status, for example, is 30. So what does that mean? Well, I don't know. I had to look it up. But that means download failed, right? So there is information there. And these are the location of the MSI log files. It changes whether it's a device or a...
You mentioned it, but I was led to believe that with that, with the new Win10 app, you could point it at a folder of files and then specify a different file to install it from. Is that?
Yes. Yes, absolutely, yeah.
So you can specify like a PowerShell file, MSI, an MST, or an exit.
Yes,
Right, okay.
you can. Yeah. Okay, so for AppX, there's not so much information about AppX. It's just event logs if you need to troubleshoot. Maybe perhaps not so straightforward. Okay, so in summary, with PowerShell, desktop app converter, and sidecar, you can pretty much deploy most software now. There is still work to be done. For example, what I said was, how do you deploy stuff to hardware-related BIOS updates? How do we take care of that? The content from the cloud, we just had a chat about this outside, is still missing, so there's no bandwidth management, there's no delivery optimization, unless, of course, you're using the store. There's DO from the store. And if we still want to use scripts, because let's face it, we're all nerds, we do borrow our scripts with pride, so where do we put the content? We have to provide that ourselves. Okay, so I have to say, Sidecar for Apps, that new development, to me is a huge, huge step forward. So I know I started very negatively in everything I said, but because it was necessary, because we couldn't do very much. But now I believe that's very, very helpful. It's a major leap forward. And there's much more to come. Thank you very much.